do Rick and Morty because I had a TV thing up there to do as well. So, but it's
Understood.
just, yeah, I'll talk to Lance every now and then, Lance Festerman, about it. And because he started right that first year, kind of his creation, and he wanted Newsarama in there. And I remember we were just like, okay, sure. What are we going to do? And yeah, that was, it just took off running from there.
We would set up in the skybox and do both floor interviews, but also interviews up in the skybox. And
did I jam you on an interview with somebody? That was
not, you mean in a bad way or in a good way?
No. It was just like, you interview him. We don't have an interviewer or something.
Well, yeah, there was. I love this, and I'll tell this story because it was incredible. You were awesome. At the time, Space.com had bought Newsarama.
Right.
They don't own it, and of course now it's I forget even what Games
Radar.
Games Radar. Thank you. Yes. So and they really loved, and listen, it was the comic book club guys.
Yeah.
They were up in the skybox.
Yeah.
Yep. And I was running around on the floor getting interviews and stuff. And there was a double booking issue where the guys were already talking to Orson Scott Card, and Grant Morrison showed up.
Oh.
And somebody came down and it's like, get up to the skybox. We're double booked. Someone has to interview Grant. And I'm like, I would love to talk to Grant. And this is when RIP was, yeah, and RIP was still going on. Batman RIP.
Yep.
And Superman for All Seasons was just about to start something. But those are the two main subjects to talk about. And it was great. And I mean, of course I'm ready. I'm a reader. I know these books.
Of course.
So we have a great 8 minutes or whatever it was. We finish, and you got in the Space.com's face and go, this is why we have Suntress, because he can come in cold and do that kind of interview. So don't ignore what he's doing. And the guy's like, all right. And it's
there are some tense moments with that whole marriage, shotgun wedding type of thing.
I'm happy. Yep. Yeah.
Oh, since we're talking New York memories, my New York memory when I think it was a late night thing. It was a CBLDF late night thing, and I was there covering it or something. And Charles Brownstein was just like, "Hey, come here. Let me introduce you to some people. They really, really like your stuff. They're fans." I'm like, "All right, whatever." I'm like probably going 36 hours without sleep or something. And he's like, "Matt, I want you to meet this. This is Bill Hader on SNL, and this is Seth Meyers." And they're just like, "Oh, you're the Newsarama guy. We love Newsarama. We read it every day." And I'm like, thanks a lot. I'm so tired. I just thank. And like to this day, I kick myself over that. I'm just like, yeah, I shook his hand. Yeah, that's. Yeah.
No, I understand. That's awesome.
I'm sorry. I need to go write a story about Transformers and G.I. Joe. You don't understand. I can't talk right now.
Exactly. No, it's true. You're right.
Yeah.
That's awesome, man. No, isn't it great? I mean, truly, and it's only gotten more like this. And starting back with Kevin Smith when you were doing the movie Poop Shoot and everything.
Right. And Chris Ryle is going to come back and do movie Poop Shoot too someday. I promise you. I promise him too. And he denies it all the time. We see each other weirdly. We like always bump into each other at like smaller shows. And I'm like, "You ready to do Poop Shoot too?" And he's like, "No." I'm like, good. You're on the block. Haven't lost it, man. Haven't lost it. Good to go.
Yep. But I mean, you've seen how even then it was like, oh wow, Samuel L. Jackson is a comic book fan.
Yeah.
Or Patrick Stewart wants to be Spider Jerusalem from Transmetropolitan. It's like, what? And now it's like, of course, these guys are still fans, and Seth Rogen is producing, Preacher and the shit he does, and The Boys, and it's insane, and it's like it's great, and I still will get people. It's like, hey, I'm a screenwriter on CSI, Miami. I love Word Balloon. It's like, okay, yeah, it's awesome. Or Scott, Friday Night Lights and Heart of Dixie. Scott, damn it.
Yeah,
he played the animated voice of Cyclops, and
everyone on YouTube is screaming at you right now.
I know. Well, I hope someone watching might be able to look that up while we're talking. But and it was like him, and it was a screenwriter on one of his shows, and it's like, hey, he really wants to do Word Balloon. I'm like, fine, and his PR people are like totally big timing me. Well, he's really busy, and I'm like, he's asking me. And finally, through our intermediate friend, I'm like, let him know that his people are being nothing but difficult. So then Scott himself emails me, he's like, I'm so sorry. He goes, can I do it on my car phone while I'm driving to the studio? I'm like, of course you can. And we have this amazing conversation. And he was and he's like, dude, I'm so sorry. I'm like, dude, I'm a podcast. And I mean, the video people can appreciate the motion I'm raking right now, where it's like, nobody, I understand. I'm not CNN. I'm not USA Today. They're used to big fries. I'm barely a guppy in the pool. But no, it was terrific. So no, it's that kind of appreciation.
It's so crazy to think back on those days, the early 2000s. I mean, I've been doing it since kind of mid 90s. But then early 2000s when it just really took off, and we weren't kids, but we were making this up as we went. We were trying to figure out how to do it. It was so funny of how Newsarama was head to head against CBR. Jonah is one of my dearest friends now.
We all love Jonah. Absolutely.
I know, like, I always look and like we text back and forth like a couple times a month or check on each other. And we were just, I don't know. I think about 7 people would be interested in a book about that era. But just when you think of all the crap that we did and how fast we lived on those things, and woof, yeah.
There's I'm holding up a business card because at C2E2, there's a guy, Keith Dallas, and he worked at Broken Frontier or one of the other, one of the other news sites and stuff. And no, like he's going to come on sometime this month, and we'll be talking about that same thing. No, man. Again, it was the advent of the 24/7 comic news cycle.
Yeah.
That Rich is still doing it, Bleeding Cool, and Games Radar and CBR. Even though Jonah's not at CBR anymore, it is different though, and I'm sad about that. With the exception of Rich, where it is still idiosyncratically his site and his editorial philosophy.
Yep.
Games Radar and CBR, they're a shadow of what they used to be, in my opinion.
Yeah. I mean, this is going to sound like, when I'm sipping champagne, but it's like, I will every now and then. You can't see it; it's over there. The Newsarama Eisner is on my shelf, and I'll see every now and then. I'll be cleaning up or something, and I'll move it. It's a hefty thing, and I'm just like. Yeah, I was thinking about this morning for some reason. I'm like, yeah, we got that. Why did we get that? What year was that? And it was just to think of everything that we reported in the year leading up to that. I mean, we broke the Superman Siegel lawsuit stuff and carried that forward. We did all the major stories, the stories that the publishers wanted out there, the stories that the publishers didn't want out there. Took a beating from all the fans at one time or another, took a beating from all the professionals at one time or another. And I kind of think, now looking back, that's how we knew we were doing the right thing.
I hear you, man.
I think all of us together, and this isn't a Newsarama above everyone, but I think all of us together, for better or worse, we helped birth the world that we have now. We helped comics being covered in mainstream media. We helped that happen. We pushed that. We showed the world it was cool. We got online and had our platform where we could show the world what we loved with the passion that we had. And yeah, like you said, now it's just a commodity. Now it's just, it's, this is a scheduled release on this date, and this is a scheduled release on this date. And,
the top 5 lists and just, and really, I know I'm brushing with a very wide brush right now and damning, and I don't mean to disrespect those that are putting an effort in and having more in-depth interviews or oral histories and things like that. And there are examples of that. Yes. It just feels like there's less of that and more. Yeah, but we need that clickbait top 5 FF villains or top 5 Namor moments now with Black Panther coming up.
Right. Yeah. Yep. Yeah, exactly.
What are you going to do? But that's all right. Well, I want to talk about what we want to talk about, which is how much science is in today's science fiction. And you mentioned it earlier. There is, of course, the Science of Rick and Morty book that you wrote a few years ago and stuff. So let's start with Rick and Morty. Now, how are they? It seems like that is one of the better at least, science fiction ideas pop up on the show.
Yeah. Rick and Morty, while it is not 100% science,
Sure.
it treats it differently. I was thinking about this earlier today, and it's like every show handles it differently, and Rick and Morty does it in a way where it will nod to the science, and it does it in the best way that I like. And I think I refer to it in the book of it's a Trojan horse. And it makes it look cool. It makes it look interesting. And so you might go hunting for this stuff and find out of, hey, remember that weird episode? It's actually kind of real. There's actually some stuff in there that's kind of true. And, hopefully it hits the right person at the right time, and they see, oh, the real stuff is actually more interesting or as interesting as what I saw there. I think I say it on in the foreword of Rick and Morty. My dream would be that someday, and this is appropriate because we're in the Nobel season right now, that a Nobel Award winner and whatever, something, wins it. And one of the questions they get is, what made you start this line of research? And in the book, I say, the recipient kind of looks down, and she kind of looks down and laughs to herself for a second and says, there was a show called Rick and Morty. And, because it will be sometime in the future. And just like Star Trek inspired and influenced the engineers of today, we all have our communicators and tricorders.
Amen.
And, I kind of wonder of just where can we go if it's done well, if it's done with a certain amount of respect. Not that Justin and Dan, are trying to turn Rick and Morty into a science show. They're certainly not. But the way they drip these ideas out, I was just watching, the second episode of this new season. Again, they're back with the Roy video game in a virtual reality.
Yes.
Simulated reality. And it's just, I go into it a lot in the book. And when you go into it, it's like, I think I need to put this down and stop reading about this. And I'm going to go out look up in the sky and wave to the kid that's playing this game, and hope that they keep the power on or whatever. Because there's some real solid lines of philosophical thought that say it's more likely than not that we're living in a simulation. And worse than that, we're not the first simulation. We're not like the kid is in his basement playing us. We're a simulation within that simulation, within that simulation, within that simulation. It would be like The Sims having a home computer, and on that computer there's a game. That's nice, but that's not us. We're about 100,000 off of that one. The simulations within simulations. And it's just, like I said, it kind of is like, I tell my kids, my students and I have an interesting relationship. And I say, these are like stoner thoughts. These are things that you hear and you just go, I got to lay down for a minute. I got to think this.
Absolutely.
But the best way out that I've ever heard of are we living in a simulation probably is the kind of like the upside of it, or the more optimistic side of it is, well, doesn't that just mean that you want to live the best, most interesting life possible? So if someone is watching you, they don't go, oh, this is boring, click.
Delete.
Yeah. Yep. And it's so.
Matt, I didn't want you to disturb me with your thoughts. Good Lord.
That's
the end of
Morty.
It's the end of Men in Black.
The episodes where they change memories and take memories out. That's real. They did experiments on that where and it's simple. It's super simple. It's so simple. I don't know why politicians haven't tried it yet, like with a crowd, of just that kind of idea that, one, eyewitness testimony is hot garbage. You see what you think you see. And two, if you help someone along by just giving them a little bit of help, a little bit of history, and say, oh, remember that party that you went, and Sue was there and Jaden was there, and those are actually names of your friends, and it was a good party, and it was down a road where it actually happened, but remember, it just got out of hand, and there was a fight and the police showed up. None of that other stuff happened. But if you just start talking, no, don't you remember that? The police showed up and your parents were really angry at you for being at that party. After a while, that person will start to go, yeah, wait, that kind of sounds a bit familiar. They did experiments like that they had to stop because they were basically creating memories in the subjects' heads. So yeah,
Yikes.
yeah, that's all. I mean, science fiction-y science that's kind of real. That's, like I said, you could see a politician just grab this and run and say, "Don't
I
you all
believe.
remember when you saw?"
Well, I believe there is a bit of that going on right now regarding some shocking things that have happened in our country, and
Yeah,
there is a
yeah,
lot of politicians that are.
exactly.
Oh no! What are
Exactly.
you talking about? They're tourists. They were
They're
just
just
hanging
tourists. They were
out. Come
just having a
on!
great time. Don't you
Wasn't a
remember?
big deal. Nothing
It needs to be
happened.
a little bit more subtle than that on the memory change.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
would hope so. God, had
Right.
you ever? John Ostrander told me that his great buddy Del Close, one of the fathers of improv
Oh,
comedy,
Dell's
uh,
got Dell.
yes,
Dell is
he would do the LSD
yes.
experiments
Yep.
back
I've
in the
heard that. Yeah.
50s.
Yeah.
And my favorite one that John told me was Del was in a sensory deprivation tank, and it's a clinical LSD test. It was a government test,
Yep.
and so they gave him LSD. They put him in the sensory deprivation tank. He is one with the universe, totally tripping, and he says all of a sudden the tank opens up, and all he sees is this bright light. Can't see anything other than this bright light. And someone goes, "What would you like for lunch? Lunch, lunch." And he's like, and again, because he's tripping, and he goes, "Tuna salad sandwich, sandwich, sandwich." They closed up again. About 5 minutes later, bright light. They hand him a sandwich, and yeah, it's just like, oh my god. So no, you're right about that stuff, man.
Yeah.
It's insane. In fact, Clover Press is in the midst of doing a multiple graphic novel series about the LSD and some of the other crazy tests that the government was doing back in the 50s.
Yeah.
But I want to ask you about some of the things you cover in your website, which is thescienceof.org. And you have a lot of great articles and stuff.
Thanks.
And like, for instance, I mean, well, we just had the Fantastic Four commercial for Alex Ross's Full Circle book, but you had a great article about Galactus.
Yeah.
And that the origins of Galactus, there is some hard science in there.
Yeah. And that's one of the things, kind of talking of the larger picture of how much science needs to be in these stories. I really, like, in terms of science, and I swear I'm not punching down here, but I really like Marvel is really committed in this idea of their science, largely speaking, that, no matter what Stan said back in the day, the Marvel universe is not the universe outside your window. And there's evidence now. They've got the insistence that Odin and Phoenix and the all the rest, Ghost Rider on a Mastodon or whatever, which doesn't make sense. The Avengers of 1 million BC are protecting pretty modern looking humans, kind of as you would a pet. 1 million BC, there were no humans. There were no recognizable humans. We're not that old. We're about 200,000 for just hominids that we would recognize as, that kid's got something going for him. Someday he's going to have a podcast.
Unfrozen caveman lawyer.
Yeah, exactly. And we're 20,000 years that we recognize ourselves, 12 with agriculture. But yeah, that push of just like, no, 1 million years ago, like, cool, that's interesting. I mean, and you could, so that was kind of, I did write one on 1 million years ago, Avengers 1 million years ago, BC.
Is that like Savage Avengers, basically?
No, Savage is just a team of roughnecks.
Okay.
Kind of going,
because I know Conan was on that team.
Yeah. That's a little bit different than what they're doing here with and Jason Aaron hits it. Jason Aaron, speaking of our con stories, I remember Jason Aaron when he was this young kid who just won the talent prize and was like so nervous because he wanted to meet Grant Morrison, and he came up to me and Vanita and he's just like, do you guys know Grant Morrison? And now it's like, Jason, what aren't you writing?
Jason Aaron, absolutely, man.
Yeah.
I'm so happy for him. That's truly, Matt. And again, real fast aside, that's been the great thing. Only 17 years for me, nearly 30 years coming up in a couple. You're just under 30 years in terms of how long you've been covering. And these people that we meet, Tom King is a great example of that. Josh Williamson, Snyder, all these guys and women too. I mean, good Lord, my dear friend Stephanie Phillips, is really on the fast track now and did a lot of great stuff at DC and is now starting to do great stuff at Marvel. And it's great. I'm so happy for these people and that they're doing well and their work is being well received.
Yeah. Yep. Anyway, so Galactus.
Yes. Yeah. Tell me the story.
Galactus it's interesting with Galactus because it ties into one of the science features of Vision and Scarlet Witch on the cosmic microwave background radiation, the CM background BR. Yeah, CMBR. That the bubble was made of and stuff like that. And
in WandaVision,
WandaVision. But that got all of us science writers and science communicators going, oh, I can talk about that. So I did too. But the actual cosmic microwave background radiation is everywhere you look. We're in it. It's everywhere. And that's evidence of the Big Bang, a hot Big Bang, that there's more to it than this, that went back to a singularity where there was quantum disturbances in the field and all that. There's no sign that there was anything before this. And that's what, for Galactus to exist, that's what has to happen. Al Ewing is doing a tremendous job with his Defender series, that tripping back through the different universes, cosmoses, before this one. And so I just kind of wanted to fold in the real science with Galactus and say, Galactus needs this, but in our universe, there's no evidence of this. Let me explain. And if there is there's a field of a few astrophysicists who were like, no, we had cyclic. There would be a cyclic universe in and out, and a couple variations on that. And they're saying that, there's evidence of it. There's really not. The cosmic microwave background radiation is pretty clear in what it's showing. And what it's showing is what was inside that singularity 13.8 billion years ago that just went, and is now everything. Wow. Yeah. It's again, kind of stoner moment. If you need to lie down, I can vamp for a minute or two.
I'll smoke after our conversation. Right. But no, honestly, Matt, not only stuff like that. All right, now, and this ties into one of my gripes. And as a science teacher, high school, correct? High school science teacher?
High school, physics and chemistry.
There you go, man. All right, so not the simpleton stuff. That's on our way to what we need to get into college if we want STEM background stuff. Well, all right. The stuff that and I forget which telescope it is that we've been getting the most recent.
Webb. James Webb.
Yes. All right. That stuff has been amazing. And then also they had the one shot including audio of like a pulsar that was actually making noise. Some sort of star. Yes. Yeah. And that's why. Yeah. And I appreciate you saying that, Matt, because here's my gripe. Star Trek used to be very much science-minded. Asimov was a consultant on the original series. I learned about the Dyson sphere and the theories behind the Dyson sphere on the Scotty episode of Next Generation, and it was a small part of the story, but still it was. And certainly science fiction novelists are still very concerned and putting science in their stuff. But where New Trek is now drives me fucking insane, including the fact that they have a science advisor on the show. Right. And my point is, because there was one thing, I loved Strange New Worlds. It's the best of the new Treks.
It's Star Trek.
Yes, very much so. But in the second episode of the first season, it was the Uhura focused episode. And one of the bridge crew is like, they're going to a planetoid or a meteor, and there's a thing on there that's making noise. And the guy goes, the bridge crew guy goes, well, as we all know, space is very loud. And I'm like, no. And all right. And now here's my layman from what I remember from school. I'm like, wait a minute, space is in a vacuum. I mean, it's certainly even before Ridley Scott's tagline on Alien, in space, no one can hear you scream. I'm like, no, it's a vacuum. There is no sound. You are the science teacher. Is there truth in that statement?
It's one of those things as a science teacher I hate, because it's like In space, no one can hear you scream. It's a beautiful sound clip. It's or a sound bite. It's beautiful. It gets the whole idea across, and I can go from that and just say, well, because there's no air and sound has to have a medium in which to travel, there's not enough, and that can stick. And that's the level I go with. And there is some truth in, when there's like, oh, NASA recorded a black hole and its inhuman sounds will make you stay awake at night. Whoever writes those headlines I wish they'd find something else to do.
I'm with you, bud. Go on.
Because it's really confusing. It's because the actual truth to that, of how that works, is it's a lot more in depth than just what they're hinting at. And what they're hinting at is just, they're not hinting at anything besides click me. And that's the world we live in. And, yes. But there are particles, they don't collide like they do here, like me talking to you in the air, right. Molecule after molecule. And yeah. It can be, you can collect the pressure waves. I mean, you can turn anything into a sound. It's just attach a pressure wave to it, attach a vibration to it, and call it a sound. And it's just interpreting data, interpreting frequencies as sound. And you can do that. There's a bit more to it, but yeah, I'm not a fan. And I know we mentioned, the original of where it's like there's no sound in space. Gotta remember the very first Abrams Star Trek, there was that scene where the hull was breached and the crew member was screaming as that happened, and they got sucked out, and immediately they stopped screaming. And of course, there were still explosions happening that were making noise, but throw those out. Gotta pay the down.
Yeah, that's fine, and that's one where they got it right. But again, now it just, I don't know. New Trek just annoys the hell out of me, because I think they have dumbed down the level of science in their science fiction to an embarrassing level, especially given that for decades, Star Trek was a leader when it came to the science in science fiction. You mentioned it earlier about all the different engineers and scientists inspired by Star Trek. One of my favorite History Channel, or maybe it was A&E, documentary was How William Shatner Changed the Universe.
Yeah, that was a great one.
And it's great because there's a lot of real stuff in there. And of course, very typical Shatner, tongue-in-cheek, and it's all because of me. Yeah. And it's like, and it's funny as hell, but it's like, hey, like we said, cell phones came from the Star Trek communicators. Our iPads came from their pads.
Yeah.
Come on. I mean, and that's the thing. It's like, no, or even the theory of ion propulsion is something that they are exploring, because it would mean that we could power our spaceships.
Yeah, we do.
Sucking energy from the stars and stuff. I mean, it's,
we have ion engines. Yeah.
There you go, man. And instead I like one of the seasons, and I always pick on Discovery in particular, but it's like, we have a dark matter and a DMA, a dark matter anomaly. And it's great. The Admiral goes, what is it? And the response is, well, we don't know, sir. That's why it's an anomaly. And I'm yelling at my TV. It's an anomaly, asshole. That means they don't know. They
should have just looked at the camera and just been like, we have people from the 21st century watching. We can't explain that right now. I mean, that's one of the things. It's almost Clark's law of Trek is 500 years plus in the future. Discovery, yeah, because we did a couple panels on that. And Dallas, and I think MegaCon, and that was one of the questions of, has Discovery kind of broken one of the rules of Trek by throwing itself so far in the future? Because literally everything is magic. Everything would be magic. It doesn't matter. It doesn't have to be science-based. And even just the asides of things that you could tell, like the writers and producers always wanted, the portable transporters and all that stuff, which makes it really cool. But if you have that, you had to have had all the developments up to that. It's kind of like evolution. You don't just get an eye, you get all the half eyes, the bad eyes, the things that are just sending a little bit of light and a little bit of color. You get all that up to that point. And when we're talking about technology, all of those things go out on their own paths. And so, yeah, if you have portable transporters that you can just throw open, basically a portal like Rick, you've got so many other things that are just magic that just it kind of takes all the drama away from the story. I was surprised that they jumped that far, because now what's the conflict? There's no conflict, because you can just pull out some hitherto unknown or unrevealed piece of technology that does exactly what you need it to do, and it looks like a magic wand, whatever.
To the point where in Picard season 1, they've essentially got their version of the sonic screwdriver, that it's some sort of device, and all you have to do is think, and it'll do what you need it to do. And it's like, what the fuck are you talking about? And it's just so it to me, Matt. And I'm not asking everyone needs to have a degree at MIT to write for Star Trek, but that said, I just feel like the writers are not up to the task of giving us something plausible. And in fact, I'm rereading the 50-Year Mission oral history books that Mark Altman co-wrote. And man, you read the Next Generation writers, and it's like, yeah, it was a burden, but we knew that it was part of what we were there for, to include real science ideas. And it wasn't easy, but we did it. And again, you watch Picard or you watch Discovery, and you're just like, you guys are just morons when it comes to this shit.
Yeah, sometimes, like you said, Strange New Worlds. Because I know I've talked to a couple times Erin McDonald, who's the advisor.
She's the advisor. Okay,
she's amazing.
That's the thing. Go on.
But the thing with advisors, and any advisor will tell you, and that's it's a whole side conversation of why there is so much science and tech in stuff now. But any advisor will tell you, your job is to make the science sound plausible and give suggestions. Your job is not to contribute to the script. You are not writing it. And so Erin does. There have been a few times where I forget what series it was in previously, but there was a Strange New Worlds episode where they were trying to find the Romulans, and they used just the shift, the change in how the light traveled. That's a real thing. You can do that. And she, in one of her audiobooks I listened to, she explained the whole thing out. It's like, you could do that. And it was pulled from one of the earlier episodes too, that they did it. I don't want to say Deep Space Nine or Voyager, maybe. I think Voyager. I forget. Somebody will correct. But so there is, and like the opening sequence of Strange New Worlds shows it's pretty accurate in what it shows in terms of astronomical phenomenon that's out there. But yeah, I think what you're saying is a bigger problem in terms of just entertainment, especially in science. And I was just talking to an up-and-coming science teacher the other day about this, that I can see. I mean, I'm not sure how familiar you are with YouTube science presenters, and they've, over time, the more popular you get, the more views you get, the further you step away from the science, and the more you step into the showcase. And there's a guy, Mark Rober. He's been on Kimmel a few times. I love Mark Rober to death. I love him. He is my Twitter friend because he's liked 2 of my tweets.
Nice.
But hey, and I did have a comment on one of his things, the blood. It was like, do sharks go after human blood or something? And he took a bag of blood, and it was red at the top, and he dove down 20 feet, and it was gray. I'm like, you should have mentioned that, because you lose your red color as you go down. Wow. Mira's hair, lie. It is not red. It cannot be red. Physically, it cannot be red. Also, there's not much light, but that's another issue. But yeah, the bigger you get, and the bigger you want to get, and the more you want your audience to be, the more spectacle you do. And I think Star Trek's kind of a victim of that. It's like, my friends that I know who are the YouTube presenters, science stuff, it kind of feels like some of them are just, I gotta get a show. Hey, Netflix, call me. And it's just like, and then when you hear somebody got a show, it's like, it's going to be a combination of science fun and science facts, and then we're going to like blend in pop culture. I'm like, no. I think there's an audience. I think there's an audience for like straight up science. I mean, we're of the same age. I think Carl Sagan did okay with Cosmos.
Well, and honestly, I was going to ask how was Neil deGrasse Tyson and Seth MacFarlane's Cosmos that Fox did?
Not the same, but good.
Okay. No, and 100%. No, and I mean, I do remember Carl's show.
Yeah, Neil's terrific. But
you should know. Let's throw the picture up.
Hey, my new best friend in the whole world, and Neil deGrasse Tyson. No, she's not my new best friend. That's me, my wife, and Neil deGrasse Tyson. We that was a week ago yesterday. Yeah, that we
outstanding, man. I'm
we
so proud
had
of
a
you. That's great.
conversation with him as part of the Bookmarks Book Festival here in Winston-Salem, and it was amazing, amazing. And his Cosmos was really good, but with Carl, you can't. All of us who call ourselves science communicators in one way or another, science teachers, science educators, I think all of us look back at Carl and say, man, if I could just, and all of us try, and we end up being ourselves. Hopefully we're not just imitating, and we end up being ourselves, and we're, maybe better in some ways and worse in other ways, and things like that. But there's something about that original Carl Sagan version of Cosmos that just has an innocence and a sense of wonder to it, and everything was brand new and breathtaking. And kind of when Neil did his, and he did the big episode on extinction, I'm like, man, what a downer. This just really, wow. And I get it was really good, and it was really, but it was like, oh, everything's dead. But it's a problem with science communication. I think there's an audience out there that just says, I'll take the science, man. I will go, just let's talk science. And
totally
doesn't need the giggling co-host that happens to be doing 4 sets of stand-up at Caroline's next weekend or something.
No, I hear you, man. Thescienceof.org, everybody. That is Matt's website. I'm saying it and showing it for the audience, the audio.
Matt and Shari's, my wife.
Yes, indeed.
Yep.
Yes, once again, let's show the picture.
She is
that's Shari in the middle.
Yep, that is Shari in the middle. I hope so. She is the doctor in the family. I'm just the missus.
Wow.
Yep.
There you go.
Doctor in science education, focusing on what is it? Troubled not difficult students. It's just so embarrassing that I forget. But hard to reach students. Basically, that's what it is.
Wow, and she's teaching science to hard to reach students.
Actually, right now she left the classroom a couple years back. She is the vice president of education and outreach at our science museum here in Winston, Callidium. And they're building a new facility downtown, which is just going to be this cutting edge science museum, the likes of something this town has never seen. So it's just going to be amazing. And I'm super proud of her for everything she does with that. She's folding in as much pop culture as she can as well.
And that's wonderful. I mean, that's the thing. And also, as you said, there is an audience that just wants the science. And if anything, our ability now to communicate on the internet, just like Word Balloon, man. I mean, I don't expect, being in Chicago, I know there's plenty of comic book fans, not enough to sustain a real radio show, but I certainly could do one on the internet and have a global audience that likes to hear about what we talk about. So go ahead. What were you going to say regarding that? About an audience wanting hard science.
Hard science. I think in recent experience, the one that did it the best was The Expanse. Both the book series and the series that started on Amazon or started on Sci-Fi and ended up on Amazon.
Yes,
they worked so hard to make. I mean, the books are phenomenal. If you've never seen The Expanse, start with reading the books, and you will become that person of, look, show's good, but let me tell you, books are better. And you'll read all the novels and all the little pieces around. But yeah, I mean, The Expanse is. I was looking through my stuff for my classes tomorrow. We're just starting Force's Newton's 3 laws of motion, and you can talk about little wooden carts rolling back and forth. I have the Rocinante from The Expanse, and we have to talk about how once that thing gets up to speed, they would show in the series that it flips, because once you're going in space, you're going, and you're going to keep going. You need to do something to stop yourself, and so that's the ship would flip. Literally, and then it would burn its engine that way to slow it down while it's still going that way. And just little things like that like you see in Star Wars. It's like, hey, that's a cool ship. Why does it need to be aerodynamic? Because it's never ever going to enter the atmosphere. That's okay. Just I mean, going back to Star Trek Love, the Borg were just like, technology, STEM, our ship is a cube. And just, your ship is a cube, because you know what? It can be a cube.
Looks cool. Yeah, no, and it's certainly a contrast to the aerodynamics of the Enterprise, so I can understand that.
Yeah, well,
and I agree with
has to
you.
crash every now and then, so enter atmosphere.
Well, and it's, I mentioned Mark Altman and the 50-year mission. He does Inglorious Treksperts, which is one of my favorite Star Trek podcasts.
Yeah,
and he was complaining because for Star Trek Day, they made T-shirts that said "The Enterprise is landing," and he's like, "No, the Enterprise doesn't land. That's the whole point. It has to stay in space. It's too goddamn big.
It has to be built in space." What was it? Abrams' first,
right?
Built on land.
In Iowa.
How? Yeah, in Iowa. Nowhere near the equator to get that thing up. It's by the equator for a reason. We launch rockets from the equator, around the equator, for a reason.
Well, and in fact, this is, and you'll forgive me for tooting my small science horn.
Please go.
Prophets of Science Fiction. I am so pleased that those producers came to me and wanted me to be part of the show. And it was only because of the research they gave me to speak about the various people we were discussing that Jules Verne, back in the late 1800s, figured out, well, if we're going to, shoot a rocket, it's got to be near the equator. And this is why. And here's this French guy during the steampunk era coming up with, these ideas. And it's like, that is fantastic. That is amazing. Yep. And again, it was part of science fiction that far back where it's like, it has to be this way. And this is why.
Right.
So say why they have to do it near the equator.
You get that kick because the Earth's spinning fastest at the equator. And so you just you get the push from that. It's not spinning as fast.
Sure.
Problems with living on a ball, man. Problems with living on a ball.
Well, and again, Apollo 13, and God, Matt, I know I'm older than you. I'll be, but I do, as a little kid, I couldn't wrap my head around Apollo 13 while it was happening. And now you watch, and I think they do a very good job, given that it's a 2-hour Hollywood movie, of explaining, all right, well, do we abort and force them down now? Or do we use the trajectory of them, whipping around the moon, giving them the momentum to come back? And it's like, oh, that's amazing. Yep. And it is those kind of gravitational pushes and pulls that I think really do, A, make space travel possible, and B, it's like, isn't that this is how incredible our universe is. And it's exciting to know that. And it's like, convey those kind of ideas instead of just the Enterprise is landing or whatever. And it's like, God damn it, you people should all be arrested except for Aaron. And by the way, I was going to say, to give Aaron a saving grace, as it's been explained to me from a couple of the background people that I know that work on the show, yes, the science advisor suggests, but again, it's a suggestion. The writers don't have to take it.
Right. If the story, and I can, having written a handful of stories, handful of comics here and there, it's like, if the story's first, if the science fits, no one's writing. Rick and Morty is not a show about science. Rick and Morty is a show about grandkid and his grandfather. And so if it fits, it fits. If it doesn't, I come to the point of view, it's a windy path of, if we can teach science better, then they'll realize that if you put the real science in there, as much real science as you can, it actually makes the story better. My kids in chemistry, this fall, they are reading, along with all their other books that they have to read for other classes, they have to read a book in chemistry, The Martian.
That's great.
And it was the best thing in the world because I have every week part of their grade is discussion boards where it's either a video that they have to watch and talk about it and respond or whatever. And so this last week was we did the first 4 chapters of The Martian and just give me your response, give me your take on it. And so many were, I never would have read this book, but oh my gosh, it is so good. And how he lays stuff out as problems that he has to solve.
Yes.
And it's just like, oh, it's working. Yeah, but I put The Martian right up there with a couple flaws in it, but right up there with Apollo 13. It's competence porn. It's just, who knew what a good feeling it is to watch a smart person challenged to the edge of their abilities, not because there's a wolf chasing them or something, but challenged by problems that they have to solve and they have to solve and they have to solve and they have to solve, and they do it. Like Mark Watney says, you solve enough in a row and you get to go home. And that's, I don't think there's anything better that we could give our kids and just people of we got big problems that we need to solve, and we can do it. But we just
so true, so true, and that's why and I'm curious to hear what you think of this. I know a lot of people look very cynically at Elon Musk and Bezos and what they're doing with their commercial ventures into space, but it's like, look, they've got the money. I'm not crazy, but I would much rather our country do it and it be the national imperative that it was, starting really with Eisenhower and the creation of NASA. Yeah. And then obviously Kennedy, we choose to go to the moon and all of that. And it's true. I mean, and it's been wonderful, but it's like somebody has to do this to face and solve some of the problems that we have. And so many great things have come because of the experiments that have been done in space.
Right. I like to think of, I like to think Elon Musk knows what he's doing. Every now and then I have real misgivings about that. I think his role, in history, his role is he's just a provocateur. He is pushing and poking and causing change in what he sees as a stagnant culture, a stagnant society. Bezos, look, nerd made good, and he can fly to space. I mean, he's doing some great things here and there, I guess. My books get here on time. But
who's behind Spacer X or whatever?
SpaceX is Musk.
That's Musk. Okay, I thought that was Musk. Okay.
There's and it's it's one of those things you cannot deny. When there's profit involved, it's going to go faster and it's going to work. Sure. It has the potential to work better, until you get too much money involved and then corruption. But it's the SLS that's going up, that's taking the Artemis up.
Yes.
That SLS, if you've seen the rocket, you look at it and go, this looks like space shuttle piece. It is space shuttle pieces, and it's old generation stuff, and we can maybe get it up twice every 2 years, and it costs like $4 billion to go up. I think Musk is like, I can send the Starship up $100,000 twice a week, and
that it lands, it doesn't splash down.
Oh, have you seen those things? My kids, when I show that to them in physics class, they're like, this is fake. I'm like, why? Who would make this fake? Why? But
how about the dart hitting the meteor? Oh my God,
that's a beautiful thing.
And again, Matt, we're old enough that we remember, early mornings and Cronkite and all the heavy hitter anchors and was it Stuart Rosenberg, the ABC science Julius Rosenberg.
Yep.
Julius Rosenberg. Yeah, or something close to that. Forgive me, everybody, if I'm getting it wrong. But it's like, oh, this guy really knows what he's talking about. And they'd have the models, and all right, this is what's going to happen, and it's going to go around.
Oh,
and now we're seeing this footage. Or I love going to NASA and seeing a lot of space station footage and stuff. It's incredible, the stuff we can see now. And it's like, no, please, we need to get back. What do you think of For All Mankind?
It is something it is a chocolate cake. I got started into it late, and I am not watching it fast. I'm like maybe doing an episode.
I'm the same way, man.
And I'm just like, I don't want this to ever end. I know there are 3 seasons, but it's like, oh my gosh. And I end up looking at, I know a lot of who these people are from just, having been nerd for a long time, space nerd for a long time. I'm not sure how I feel about given Werner von Braun such a big role. Nazi. Still haven't forgiven Walt Disney for putting a Nazi into America's living rooms on Man in Space.
Yes, that's true.
Yeah.
Hello, everyone.
Well, like how come the idea of if we put Song of the South on Disney Plus, we'll have to have Whoopi Goldberg do like Whoopi Goldberg and Samuel L. Jackson do this long presentation, but Man in Space,
hello everyone,
they're all right there, and no one's like, hey, what you're about to see is a propaganda that was very effective, and it has a Nazi in it. Cool. I just made the rockets because I was about the rockets. I had to have membership in the party to make the rockets.
Okay.
And his great line about the V2s, it's like they flew just like they should have. Unfortunately, they landed on the wrong planet. Dude, don't talk about where they landed. That's
how about, have you seen, it was called, and I believe it was on the History Channel, it was a docudrama, and it was called Space Race. and it mirrored von Braun's accomplishments with the Russian guy that was in charge of the program till the mid 60s.
I don't think I've seen that one. That sounds
I think it was on, I believe Netflix had it. I don't know if they still do, because
I'll check it.
shows will come and go. But it was really interesting and that's, I am completely obsessed with learning more and more about the Soviet space program that was parallel to what NASA was doing, and obviously initially more successful because they would take bigger risks. Or, one of my, and I'm sure you know the story, the Fisher pens that could write in space, even in zero gravity and stuff, and that $1 million of research or whatever it was went into making that. And he asked the Russians, they're like, yeah, we used a pencil.
Okay, two things on that. One,
tell me, please.
2 things on that. One,
tell me.
Story. 2, Fisher. It was a private company. It was a guy who was like, I will fix this. I will make this work. 3, the absolute last thing you want to use in an enclosed oxygen environment is a graphite pencil, which just floats carbon in the air. Which, the Apollo 1, bad things can happen. And so this like I said, you got the soundbite. That's the soundbite out there, and it's great to like take a shot at the government every now and then. But and I'm not on you, but it's just like it's one of those things of just like science education. We
correct the information, Matt. Yeah. Absolutely.
I have somewhere around here. I have a Fisher space pen, and it's wonderful. It's one of the little ones about that big and pop out and put back in.
Sure,
it's great. But yeah, it was a guy, something Fisher, who I think it was after Apollo 1. I might have my time wrong. Who was just like, I hear that this is a thing. Not that Apollo 1 was caused by a pencil. There were other problems, but it was, the guy was just like, I can make this work. I can figure out how to pressurize ink and have it still come out at the right. And that's the way it worked. The government was not involved. The government would have been like, take a Bic, shut the fuck up, and just fly.
No,
but yeah, Fisher was pretty nice about it. Take a clicky pen, Neil Armstrong, go.
Yeah. This was actually given to me by Charles Nelson Riley. It is a Bic banana that was authorized by NASA.
Nice.
That's great. No, man. Hey, I remember getting my Fisher pen when I was a little kid. It was a big deal. And again, I'm such a sucker for anything astronaut oriented. Apollo 13 for all mankind. I have to admit, and partially because of Mr. deGrasse Tyson's complaints about it, I still haven't seen Gravity.
It's okay. It's very much of the time. And see, I think, I don't know. I would say this is going to be weird, and I'm sure people that, really go heavy into film would be like, he's so wrong. But as I see it, it's like Gravity had to be made, errors and all, so we could get to Interstellar, and the Martian and Interstellar.
Yes.
Although Martian, but there are a couple things. But yeah, Gravity is a good story-ish. I like the setup and everything, but yeah, it's I took my class to see it. I was that teacher in high school.
Did you see, are you watching Quantum Leap? That's another show I wanted to ask you about. Certainly
too painful.
Too painful.
Did he ever get home? That's what I want to know.
He didn't. That's supposedly,
I know, and it just hurts. It hurts.
Well, I understand.
I will check out Quantum Leap.
Were they in the original? Were they right with their ideas regarding string theory? Okay, not at all.
No,
because they use the word.
I mean, in the original, do they mention string theory?
They do.
No, string theory is like the wannabe rock star whose band is like playing the intro, and the rock star is like holding the microphone and goes and lets the band play another like 8 bars and then the intro, and goes up again. String theory just hasn't delivered yet. And so string theory, it's like whatever you want to pick. Right now we have a good collection. It was like when Stan and Jack and Steve were doing initial Marvel Universe, radiation. No one's using radiation anymore because we know everything about radiation. Yeah.
Right.
I mean, I wrote an article on Reed for Popverse about She-Hulk and gamma radiation. And I wasn't trying to, it's like gamma radiation in the Marvel universe is a magic unto itself. Al Ewing kind of really hammered that home on his Hulk run. But so right now it's you can use string theory, dark matter, dark energy to do anything. Arrowverse, Flash. You can Flash. For supposedly smart people, they make some really dumb mistakes.
Interesting.
Science blender. Here's the science. Here's the story.
Here's the show.
Yeah. But so those things are the things that you can use now because we just don't know. And you can use those to fill in any gaps that you want. Flash uses dark matter. Dark matter or dark energy. It's dark something. In a way.
For the Speed Force.
Well, for something. It was like the particle collider, which you do not build in a city. But the particle collider, I'm not even saying from the point of view of danger. There's really not much danger. And it was a real disservice to have the big event happen that did everything there, because now we're scared of particle acceleration. The people that watch Flash might be.
You need space. You need
space.
A lot of space.
Yeah. So it's I'm not even saying that the particle collider in Central City is a danger idea, which was proven in the show. It's just that's a lot of space. That's valuable real estate. Come on now. Somebody wants to build a waterfront mixed use property there. And it's got this big circular thing that, Barry owns, but is still working as a police something.
You're killing me. That's fantastic.
You just let me write Flash. Actually, Jeremy Adams is doing a really good job. I really enjoy it.
Oh, good.
Comic right now. Yeah, I really have a fun time with it. It's like old school Wally West, but yeah.
Well, that's great. That's great to hear.
Flash had a real bad run as a character that I think I made a tweet once of just anytime Flash shows up, and he did, and I had a panel of it just in a recent comic that I was reading then, that Flash shows up and it says, well, I am kind of an expert on science. And I was just like, bullshit alert coming out. Here we go. This is going to be total bananas. He will say, like, cats are magnetic. And so if we get enough cats, we can get Dr. Polaris to come back or something.
Hilarious. Like outstanding. Oh,
yeah.
my God.
Yeah.
Bullshit, Barry.
Earlier. I forget what the question was way back. Oh, the gravity. You need some bad stuff to make the good stuff, to allow the people who want to pitch the good stuff that, we can make the good stuff. It's like, Martian, we've talked about, Andy Weir, science nerd above us all. And so his science is pretty good on that. They couldn't film it in 1/3 G, which is what Mars has, because it would have looked weird and would have cranked the budget. And that's fine. But like Interstellar's, that's not the, I think it's probably the gold standard currently for science in science fiction, partly because the guy that had the idea for it was Kip Thorne, who's a Caltech scientist, Nobel winner at this point for the gravity waves. And he was working on that thing for 20 years, 30 years. It went through everybody's hands until it finally got made. And the science, the computer program that they created to model Gargantua, the massive black hole, is so good it's still used in astronomy, astrophysics labs.
Wow.
Because it's that accurate, because they just wanted to make it look as good as it could.
That's amazing.
And the time dilation on that, I get kids asking me all the time about the time dilation. Is that a real thing? It's like, yeah, it's a real thing. And I still hold to this day that that's what happened with, who was it? Mork. That there was a season that he went away and came back, and he had a child, Jonathan Winters or something. And it was, he just took off and hung out by a black hole and came back. And that would be enough time dilation to advance his age or whatever he needed to do. So
that's hilarious.
It can be done. You can use science in a good way to make the story richer and deeper and get some folks interested in science.
I couldn't agree more, man. Absolutely. No, I love it. Geez, should we wrap? I don't want to keep you if you got shit.
I gotta have a half day tomorrow. It's and I'm teaching. Yeah, I got tomorrow. I'm good. So I can keep going.
Okay, great.
A little while longer.
Sure. No, all right. Well, yeah, let's go for a few more minutes. So no, those are good examples. And again, I appreciate you telling me that Flash is a bad example on TV and the Arrowverse in general. Yeah, again, I get it, and like you said, it has to serve a story. Hell, going back to Star Trek and transporters, that was the reason why they're like, well,
Right.
we can't land the ship.
Right.
It wouldn't make sense. It would be really expensive to
It'd be
show.
expensive. Yeah. Yep.
And it would scorch when it hits any planet's atmosphere before it got down, unless we come up with, the shields or whatever. So it's like, fine, transporter. There's the magic. Okay, great.
Yep.
And it's a shame that, again, but you make allowances for some storytelling things.
Right.
We mentioned For All Mankind. I'm trying to think of other shows. Well, I was going to say about Quantum Leap. I will confess that I am more interested in its ties to the original, which they very much are doing. It isn't a reboot; it is a continuation of the story. And as much as Bakula has protested that he's not on the show, I think it's a smokescreen. And I really believe.
Yeah, I kind of think so. All right, I will start watching it.
And the second episode took place on the space shuttle Atlantis in the mid-90s. And I got to say, just from a special effects standpoint, it looked great.
Wow.
And he did a spacewalk and had to mess around in the cargo area with it open to open space. And the Canadian arm and everything was featured very prominently in it.
That's promising. That's promising.
So, yeah, I mean, honestly, I'm like, I don't know. All right, good luck, Quantum Leap. But I won't deny I love the original.
Yep.
And I'm like, I have to say I've been reasonably entertained. And even from the storytelling standpoint, the guy, Ben Song, is a very likable character, a very likable actor. They're getting the whole leaping into somebody right in terms of, all right, we got to come up with some sort of problem for him to solve within this much time. In addition, though, they've got even more baggage because they focus on the Quantum Leap complex, and the story of them trying to get him back is as much of an imperative every week as it is whatever he's leaping into.
All right.
And honestly, man, 3 episodes in, I'm like, this is a good.
You sold me. I will check it out.
It's the first over-the-air network show that I honestly look forward to every week.
What's a
years.
network? What's a network?
I know.
Over the air?
Again, Matt, going back to our own nerd journalism backgrounds and stuff, it is very, as especially a broadcaster who had 20, 15 years of interest, working interest being in the business. It is what's happening in broadcasting and streaming and movies is absolutely fascinating. So let's talk about that for a minute, because really, again, and COVID has only pushed things further in terms of
accelerated all. Yeah.
Well, and the economic challenges that the studios face. Yeah. And where I think their bankers were willing to write checks. And now it's like, maybe not. Like Star Trek 4 is a classic example of that. The 4th movie for JJ. A couple of years ago, it's like, well, Hemsworth wants to do it and Pine wants to do it, but they want a lot of money. And the banks are like, no, your last movie failed from the box office. Yeah. No. How about no? And, and it's like, okay. And again, I mean, we're seeing it all the time of like, well, and certainly what's happening with Warner Brothers and their reorganization. It's amazing. Amazing.
Yeah. It's amazing to watch. Just like it's a slow motion car crash. Yeah, on so many fronts. There. I hate to be the shill for Disney, but they seem to be doing the most right. I mean, it was, all the analysts were saying, HBO Max is it's going to be the number one streamer. It's going to be the number one streamer, and it's just like. The new head of what is it? Warner Brothers Discovery? Is that what they call themselves? Yeah.
Yeah. Yes.
Disco Warner Brothers. When it was like HBO is poised to take the crown from Disney Plus. Hold my beer. Let me see how I can drive this thing right off the cliff. And they certainly did. And all the stories you see of the shows that just disappeared. Infinity Train. I love that. And I should have bought it in the first place, but now I gotta find it and buy it because it's not on HBO anymore. And
yes.
What was the one I was looking for lately? No Reservations, Anthony Bourdain. I had a moment where I was missing the hell out of Anthony Bourdain and just missed him like crazy. And I'm like, well, I got HBO Max. One season, the very first season. It's like,
and that's all they show.
There were 12 seasons.
Yeah.
Not the one with Obama, not the one, you know, any of these ones where he was being experimental with his filmmaking. Yeah. And so it's a weird time. And it's like, you know, I can go with I'm not a huge guy into physical media anymore. I used to be, but those arguments do make some sense of what you love and hold on to it. Because
yes, and it's funny, and that's what I was going to say. The interesting byproduct of that is now suddenly physical media is more important than ever if you really love something and you want to hang on to it. Hell, I had no idea. I did my usual week of sci-fi TV review show on Sunday, and the co-hosts were telling me, "Oh, you know, you can't watch the Star Trek movies on Paramount Plus anymore." And I'm like, "What?" And like, "Yeah, they yanked them October 1st yesterday." And I'm like, "Well, I know that's temporary, and it must be. I'm sure there's some sort of streaming. Right now, I believe they're on AMC, both. I think probably AMC Plus and the regular networks.
Whoever gives the most money for it, yeah."
Yeah, and I'm like, okay, it's a temporary thing. It may maybe even be a full year.
Yeah.
I have no idea. But it is those kind of weird things of, yeah, I know you bought this service to watch that show. Well, it's not there anymore. And it's like,
yeah,
what?
Yeah.
What?
Yeah.
It's
and again,
crazy.
Disney seems to be doing okay. I haven't noticed anything or seen any outcry of stuff disappearing off of Disney, which I guess, you know, you have the flexibility to keep everything up there and, you know, buy half of a state for server farms, I guess, if you're number one. But yeah.
I also wonder both from, and forgive me for interrupting, but
sure.
Given what happened with the hurricane and the destruction in Florida, as DeSantis was fucking with Disney and their Freedom USA community and everything, I wonder if they are willing to take on that economic burden of you know, because all of the regular street sanitation, fire, police, all that was being paid for by Disney within that community.
Within Reedy Creek, yeah. Yep.
And now, you know, and now, the state's going to take care of it. Really?
No.
Well, I don't think so. And yeah, it's going to be very interesting if some of those hardline rules that, you know, they were all celebrating and stuff. It's like, yeah, it's going to come time to pay the piper, and you don't have it. And also, Disney was even more hit than a lot of the other movie studios because of the cruises and the parks.
Yeah. Yep.
And all the money they were bleeding for those 2 years when we were in lockdown and stuff. And yet they're like, nope, we have faith, and we're going to keep putting shit out.
Yep.
I don't know. It's pretty good. And obviously they've got the reserves or the pipeline of funding, but it is pretty amazing.
They got Scrooge McDuck's swimming pool.
Indeed.
Ready to go.
That's outstanding. All right, Matt. You know, the good news is there's always so much to talk about on this subject. So
there is.
We won't wait a year to do this again.
No, we will not.
You know, or however long it's been since you've been on. Tell everyone really fast, and shame on me. I'm sorry, I'm kind of lacking in graphics tonight. But as you said, you've done a few graphic novels as well. You've got your Rick and Morty book.
Right.
Give us the Matt Brady library.
Did Rick and Morty? There we are. Science of Rick and Morty. That's available on Amazon or signed copies through our Etsy store. My wife and I were the science consultants on Flashbacks from DC. There we are. Whoops.
Yes, indeed. Flashbacks. Absolutely.
That was probably such an amazing, rewarding experience because they were like, give us the topics, give us the characters that you think would. And so I'm like old school DC, just like, oh, let's have the atom go in and look at quarks inside of atoms. I put the atom into quarks, showing Mary Marvel what they're about. My wife really wanted Swamp Thing, and so it's Swamp Thing and Poison Ivy talking about DNA.
Wow!
Stories that are aimed at like kind of a youngish to middle school audience with activities in the back that we put together. And then Maya Biala came and put her name on it, and
stand by.
Said she had a great time picking out those topics and figuring out what to do. That's Hollywood.
Liar.
Yep.
Liar.
But, yeah. So yeah, there's those things, and of course there's, you know, my comics here and there. Big con job with Jimmy, Jimmy Palmiotti.
Yes, great
everyone's best friend in this industry. Everyone's consigliere in this industry. Mine as well. It's great to see him now and then at shows, and we say, you think they're gonna think the big con job is going to be picked up for a movie this year. Maybe not.
Hey man, they made James Robinson's comic book villains.
Yeah,
All based in a comic store and stuff.
that is true.
If they're smart, someone who will pick it up. And again, I was talking to another friend before we were talking, and I'm like, as we know, the streamers are hungry for content.
Yeah,
and
exactly. Maybe something will happen.
Hopefully.
Yep. And also, I'm writing stuff on Popverse for Read.
Yes.
And do some science stuff there.
Thepopverse.com, I believe.
Thepopverse.com. Yep.
Yes.
And it's super fun because I get to do some, like we were talking about before the show. I do what do they call it? Whatever. What did Ellis call planetary? The modern archaeologists, or looking at where we are, how we got to where we are by looking at the past type of thing, which is archaeology. But yeah, so I get to go back and look at things that we just take for granted, that current fans, not you and me, but current fans take for granted. So I think my first story like that was on when Spider-Man got 6 arms. And I took that as that was the seed of the Spider-Verse. And I thought I made a pretty good argument for it, that was the first time you showed that Spider-Man was malleable and you could have all these variations. And then that led to the Clone Saga and all this other stuff. And so, the next one I have is Superman Wedding. Because fans now, Superman's been married for
30 years, 32 years, something like that. Yeah.
Years. And that's nuts. And, kind of to talk about how that all happened. It shows my age that my primary source will be the Wizard article that I wrote back in the day when I broke that story, because I got a scoop from somebody who is still in the industry and I cannot name of, hey, this is going on. And I mean, the story why Superman had to get married, right?
Well, feel free if you want, or let's point people to the article. Either way, buddy.
Superman and Lois. They were going to
TV show. I thought that was this show
with Dean Cain and Terry Hatcher. They were going to marry them there, and Mike Carlin was like, "Oh hell no, we're going to marry him first." And nobody stopped to think, should we do this? And and so they hustled up and got him hitched.
But it is good because it furthered the story. Honestly, when they tried to put that genie back in the bottle for the New 52, and also they kind of made Lois an asshole. I mean, she revealed Superman's identity. I'm like, that's not Lois Lane, man. Yeah. And also they changed Superman's costume and hairdo so much, and I'm like, that's Monel in a Superman outfit.
Exactly.
It's not Clark anymore. And it really, and that's why, thank God. I don't know, and obviously Rebirth was a good example of that, where it's like, no, Superman needs to be what he was, and now we've got the modern Superman that he should be. Right. And truly, like, and I know you're a fan of both of these people, Rucka and Mike Perkins, Lois Lane's solo series was so good.
Oh, good Lord. Where she realized that where she came from and all that with the multiple universe. Oh, yes. Yes, that was a beautiful, beautiful thing.
And also just her natural role of, it's like Lois is like, and again, it's something I was telling people for all 17 years, well, however many it was until we got that series. And it's like, why isn't there a Lois Lane ongoing book like there was in the 50s through the 70s? Yep. I'm like, she is great. And it's like, everybody wants more representation of women. It's like, there's nobody better than Lois Lane. The entire DC universe respects Lois Lane, the characters, and it's like, oh, Lois is here. Well, she knows what she's
that was kind of that miniseries kind of showed why she has that position, kind of like what Tom Taylor is doing with Nightwing.
Yes,
why he is so beloved in the DCU is, I point that out to my wife, like every issue, I'm like, you need to be reading this more because this happened. And the time that he had to call off he's like, what would have happened? I think you would have had a very protective Bat family in here, ready to go. And it just, that I love those character things that kind of explain why this character is. We need more of that for Superman, though. I think we need lots of that for Superman. I don't think we ever put Superman back on some war world again. I read that the first time. I was all right, but I read it the first time it came out, after he, what was that? It was Burns' run when he killed, when he sent everybody to the Phantom Zone and he
Right.
needed time alone, and that's where that all happened the first time.
Sure.
That
But
same-
again,
but
I accept the fact that every generation needs a
yeah,
death of
yeah,
or
yeah,
something like that.
hey,
And honestly, I liked Philip's story a lot. I really did,
yep,
the current one.
yep,
And also, but no, he does need to be back, and he needs to be an important part of the DCU. He is the father figure
yep,
of all the others. That is who everyone looks up to. And sometimes you need to remove him to get people to appreciate him again.
yeah,
I don't really understand why, from an audience standpoint, Superman isn't more popular and more as popular as he was back in the day. I don't know.
he's my favorite. So
Well, and again, I mean, he's among my favorites, but
yeah,
yeah, no, he has a very distinct voice, and he is Galahad in a universe of chaos,
yeah,
and
exactly.
he is
He's
true
pure.
blue.
Yep, yep,
Yes, exactly.
yep.
And so no, we need, and just like we need cynical Batman who sees all the bullshit and isn't going to stand for it. You also need, I mean, that is the difference. Don't
Right,
try,
right,
Scott,
exactly.
Zack Snyder, please don't make Superman edgier or whatever and match him. It's like, no, it's light and dark,
Yep,
and there's a reason for that.
yep.
God, that Frank Miller moment in Dark Knight Returns when Bruce and Clark are having the conversation on the hilltop, and all the butterflies and the animals are all around Clark and loving him, and Batman, Bruce is just standing there by himself, and it's just like this
Yep.
fucking guy.
Yeah. Yep. Oh, hey, there is one more thing. I just thinking
Please.
of what I have out and coming up.
Yeah, please, man.
In my grown-up world, I do have an article coming out in Scientific American pretty soon.
Wow.
A slight change up because I'm working on. I'm about done with my master's in science writing. I'm working at Johns Hopkins with that program, and so one of the assignments this past summer was on workshop class, and we had, speaking of DART, it's how I knew so much about it, was there was NASA, JPL, FEMA do these exercises every now and then. It was 16 when they did the last one, called tabletop exercise, to just simulate and model what happens if an asteroid is directed towards Earth and does impact. And this year, the one I was reading about it, and I'm like, that can't be right. That can't. And it was going to impact Winston-Salem, North Carolina. And I'm like, this feels a little personal. I need to talk to some folks about this. And so I talked to our emergency services manager, who kind of like encouraged it to happen and what they had to kind of war game out a bit, and scientists, researchers at Hopkins Applied Physics Lab, which put it together and figured out where it would come from and what it would do. And best thing of all, I got to talk to Lindley Johnson, who is the head of NASA's Planetary Office of Planetary Defense, or Planetary Defense Officer. He's in charge of, if this really happens, he makes the calls to the White House and does what he needs to do. Fun story with Lindley. So I was working with him, or talking with him, and you'd think he's the director of Planetary Defense, Office of Planetary Defense Coordination. You'd think he would have like this palatial, or maybe like a Star Trek captain's chair. It is the most bureaucratic cubicle, like built in the 70s, the soundproofing walls with the glass, the windows up at the very top of them, the panels at the very top, not like too high for a normal human to see out, but just enough to show you that, there is an outside world there, little worker. And so I'm talking to him, asking these questions about, how it worked, how this all happened. And I'm looking like up over his shoulder, stuck to his window, is, I'm like, I recognize those colors. I said, last question, I got to ask you, is that a Mighty Mouse little figure stuck on your window? And he's like, oh, up there. He goes, yeah, that's Mighty Mouse. He goes, I wanted the Office of Planetary Defense Coordination Office, that is. I wanted to have Mighty Mouse as our mascot. And because Mighty Mouse's phrase is, and I just interrupted, I'm like, here I come to save the day. And suddenly he's like, I'm like, everybody knows Mighty Mouse. He's like, but that's what we do, basically. And he's always, there's plenty of pictures of him punching rocks in space. He goes, I wanted him to be our mascot. He said, NASA had Snoopy for years and years and years. Why couldn't we have Mighty Mouse?
Oh my God.
And I'm like, and he goes, but he goes, NASA being NASA, copyrights being copyrights, they said no, they couldn't do it. And but then he offers this one up, and I'm not sure if you might have seen this, because when Don't Look Up came out, I know he was talking about it. He goes, he said, you know what our motto is, and our symbol is, our icon. And I'm like, yeah, it's the people on the castle, and it is. And I can't pull it up fast enough here. I have a sticker of it, and I realize it's at school.
No problem.
It's a picture of like a person on top of a castle looking up, and there's an old stylized kind of like meteor in the sky. He goes, yeah, that was designed by probably somebody you've never heard of, Michael Okuda. I'm like,
oh my God.
Wait, who did Star Trek? And again, he was just like, what? You know that? And so, yeah, the Okudas did the Planetary Defense Office.
Oh my God.
Picture. And then he goes, you know what our motto is? I'm like, it's something in Latin. I wasn't familiar with it. He goes, I got Mighty Mouse in, because their motto in Latin is here to save the day.
Hilarious.
And I'm just like, wow. And that's like, you find this pop culture in science everywhere. You find fans and fandom everywhere, even when it comes to defending the Earth from asteroids. So yeah, I talked to all those folks and then wrote it up and pitched it to Scientific American. I'm like, you guys probably don't want this, but like, yes, we do. Okay.
Oh, that's so great.
I have no idea when it's coming out.
Okay.
I don't know. I know that my paperwork checked out and my check is in the process somewhere, but
hey Matt, maybe that should be the, when it comes out, that could be a reason for us to get back together and do more of this.
Yep. Sounds good.
There's plenty to talk about. Absolutely, man.
There is. Anytime. So, this was a lot of fun. Yeah.
Oh,
far too
Matt,
long since we've done this.
Yeah, Matt, Jesus. I mean, honestly, I miss you. And I really, the time we did work together was literally such a great time.
It was.
Because well, honestly, you and Mike really helped legitimize Word Balloon in its early years. I was getting in and I was seeing people and talking to people and stuff. But the fact that I was on Newsarama, it's like, oh, well, thanks. I know my audience numbers went up. It's like, oh, wait, this guy's talking to interesting people. I do want to hear from the creator beyond reading an article and stuff. Yeah. And as you know, I was inspired by magazines like the Comics Journal and Amazing Heroes,
yep.
The generation before Newsarama and what you guys were able to do. And so it was a really great partnership and I always appreciated it and still do. And you were like one of the first people where I'm like, I don't know. It's hard to get various people, and you're like, dude, and it was the nicest thing anyone's ever said to me. You're like, dude, everybody in this business really loves you. They really like what you're doing. And I'm like, oh, that's nice. I'm like, I didn't know.
See, and that kind of goes to the, that goes to the times and how we were living then. Cause it's like, just about everybody I talked to, like Troy Brownfield,
yes,
Bose, and all the crew that would work for Newsarama, everyone that I've talked to in later years have always come back and was like, I remember the one thing you told me one time, and they tell me something. I'm like, huh, I said that. Well, glad it worked out. I just, and I think Troy is. There was one time, the relationships that we would have with Marvel and DC PR offices now and then. Whew, those were not fun. And there was one time, I think Troy inadvertently got somebody upset. And I think I just picked up the phone. I called him. I was just like, you need to apologize, damn it, right now. And just hung up. And Troy always remembers that or some variation of that. I'm just like, I don't remember doing that, but I guess it worked. And I guess it was memorable. Yeah.
Well, you're right. But also by the same token, positive things like, hey, it's April Fool's Day. I need to fool people in thinking Punisher is going to start wearing a tutu. And
Spider-Man is going to join the X-Men. Spider-Man is going to join the X-Men. See, we're just planting the seeds for early days of Newsarama. We can do a whole episode on that. I got all my clips over there.
We haven't. I'm so glad, Matt, because truly that was one of the things that when Games Radar took over, they took down so much of the old articles. God damn, I'm glad I grabbed a lot of my New York Comic Con video interviews before they did that. Otherwise, I would never have them.
Yep.
And it's just like,
so it was hacked hard by Russians shortly before. I think it was like, no, shortly before we sold. And it was a bad hack, and that took a bunch out. And then shortly after I left, it got hit hard.
Okay.
But then Chris Arndt was able to find a lot of stuff, and when he was recycling.
Yeah, he's not there anymore now. He's in charge of the Pop First, and good for Chris. And really, I'm glad you're working with him. I'm glad Ashley Robinson is working with him.
Yep.
It's really, that's everybody. That's Reed's new 24/7 comic news, nerd news website, and they're obviously going to be out there in force at New York Comic Con this weekend.
Right.
Yeah, I mean, they got a bunch of credible people working there, so give them the time of day. It's worth it.
And since we're doing the Mutual Admiration Society, John, I have a handful of people that I can look back on that I worked with back in the day with Newsarama that have just gone on just bigger than I could have ever imagined. And this, you being the machine, is amazing to see, just going on, continuing on, you being where you're at. I can go over through all the names, and just like, I think I did that once on Facebook not too long ago, and it's just like, or I sent an email out to a bunch of people, and I'm just like, y'all, I'm so proud of y'all to call you my children. It's like, you think back, Newsarama, if you look at that, back in the day, Troy Brownfield, who is now the executive editor of Saturday Evening Post, Alex Segura, who was novelist, writing comics, all kinds of stuff now. David Pepos, who was doing reviews and is probably the next big thing. One of his reviews, I should save this for the history of Newsarama. One of his reviews, he took a swing at Will Wheaton. And Will caught wind of it and posted a response on the message board, and he was like, "Oh, cool, that was really cool." And I think that was one of my, "You asshole, Pepos, I got to go fix this now." And so I had to, But Pepos is, calmer now. But he's the next big thing at Marvel.
He's doing great.
Sarah, oh gosh, I'm so embarrassed, I can't remember her name.
Sarah Gatos? Which Sarah?
Yes, the Work Won't Love You Back.
Oh shit.
This is horrible.
Sorry, Sarah.
I give her book as gifts to other teachers about not killing yourself for work. It's so good, and just amazing stuff that she's doing, and that's just scratching the surface. And it's just so cool to have played just a minor role with this incredible pool of talented people that are now doing their own thing and making a huge success of it, like you. So.
Well, we thank you. I mean, I know I speak for the others as well. And again, I'm really glad we're still friends and we hang out when we can and get to have conversations like this. And when Scientific America comes out, we'll definitely do that. Everyone go to the scienceof.org.
Yes, please.
And you can read some great essays that you will love in terms of comics and hard science and how they dovetail into each other.
Yep.
So there you go, everybody. Matt Brady, thank you very much. And that might do it for live shows this week. Oh no, I take that back. I've got I'm trying. Oh yes, well actually I'm pre-recording something, so no other live shows this week. But next week I'm already stacking the deck. A lot of people are going to be at New York Comic Con. That's one of the reasons why it's a little hard to get people. Paul Kupperberg is going to be on next week. I can tell you that. And Jim DeMonakis and his collaborator that just made the Mike Mignola film documentary that's already on the festival circuit and stuff. We'll talk about that movie. So that's some stuff coming up next week. So until then, everybody,